Hey beauty lovers and fellow entrepreneurs, I'm Yegi, the owner and founder of Yegi Beauty. Within 5 years of being my own boss, I was able to grow Yegi Beauty into a multi-million-dollar company. This podcast is where I share what it takes to be a successful entrepreneur in the beauty industry. Hello. What's up, guys? I hope you're having a great week. Today, we're going to do another solo episode, and the topic is going to be about relationships. I think more than anything, the relationships we have in our lives, especially our romantic ones or the ones that are in our house that we live with, the people that we have the relationships with, affects our daily lives and our success the most. So we're going to talk about that a little bit to make sure that is in its best place for you in order for you to be successful, since, that's what we're all about: success, happiness, and a fulfilled life. So let's look back about the most common relationship issues or relationship problems that you may have that might be even affecting your life, your success, your happiness, and you're not even aware of it. Or you're aware of it, but you don't really think you can do anything about it yourself. So I think the hardest part with relationships, and with my experience, if it's family or my siblings, parents, or my husband, is that we cannot control somebody, right? We cannot control somebody else's actions. And sometimes that's really, really frustrating. But I think first we need to accept that we're not going to change somebody and we can't control their actions. So we need to either try to communicate and get through to them where they want to change their actions or their habits, or we just accept them for who they are. First things most important, okay? Communication. And I know everybody talks about that. Okay, communication is key, but a lot of people forget to communicate. We assume that the people that know us the best, they should really know what we want and what we're thinking and what we need. But the reality of it, I don't know the exact statistics, but at least 50% or more of the people in relationships, they're not clearly communicating their wants and their needs. For example, if you're expecting even a party for your birthday, you need to be pretty clear about that from your significant other. You can't assume that they know you good enough and they know that you're going to want a party this year. Because maybe in the past you've said, I just want to take it easy, I don't want to do anything. But now you change your mind and nobody knows about that. So it's as simple as literally telling them, okay, I kind of expect something for my birthday today. And it may sound silly sometimes, but that's the only way you can get what you want, is if you clearly communicate it to your partner, your friends, your family. So another example of communication is with your, let's say, sibling, right? Your sibling does something that you really don't like and you just are annoyed about it. But you haven't clearly communicated for them to maybe try a different approach and for you to explain to them why that bothers you, right? Sometimes it seems silly that we need to sit down and explain our feelings, and nobody likes really talking about that. But if you really have an issue that's coming up daily, that's affecting your mood and your energy and your happiness, you need to really pay attention to it and sit down and have a conversation. And I think that's a really hard thing to do for some people too, because a lot of times it's hard for us to confront or to even be okay with just telling people what we want. We're scared, and I don't know why that is, but I think the best way to approach that is to really work up the nerve and just talk about it, right? So we want to just, even if it makes us super uncomfortable, we want to maybe set aside a time and almost make it a plan, a scheduled meeting with the person in our relationship to resolve this issue that we're having, right? For example, if every morning, let's say my husband wakes up at 6 a.m. and he's loud, he's turning on the shower, but I'm really frustrated because I only get that 1 extra hour in the morning to sleep. Instead of yelling and screaming and saying, you're being so loud and being upset about it, or assuming that there's no other option because he needs to get ready for work, I could literally sit down with him and figure out a better plan and explain to him, hey, I'm really exhausted. I'd really appreciate it, if you can keep it down in the mornings because, I need to get my hour of rest. Again, it sounds simple, but a lot of people don't take the time to really address these little things in life in order for them to be more successful. And honestly, I think the relationships and the people around us is the key outside factor of what makes us really enjoy our life or be annoyed and upset with our lives. And if we're constantly annoyed at little things like that in our life, if it's our, again, family, significant other, siblings, kids, then we're just not going to be in the right mindset and right attitude in order for us to want to make change, okay? In order for us to want to work on something, to be inspired, to be motivated, to be happy. Have you noticed that anytime you're in a good mood, it's so much easier for you to do something that's productive versus just really try to maybe turn on the TV or scroll on social media to kind of forget about your problems? Now, the key for us is to really address those little problems so we're making better choices in order for us to be happy and successful versus almost like numbing the void or whatever that's bothering us. Okay, so here's another one that I had a big issue with in my life when I lived with my parents. And I lived with my parents when I was a full-grown adult. That's just our old school Armenian culture, stay with your parents as long as you can. But one thing that would bother me the most is anytime I was in my room, in my area, and I was really trying to focus to get something done, I kept on getting interrupted. So the door would knock and my parents or my brother, they would ask for something. Either, hey, can you help me make this call because we need help figuring out this bill issue? Or, hey, can you, warm up some food for me? Or whatever it may need to be, like minor tasks. But, if you're trying to focus and get something done and you keep getting interrupted for unnecessary things, like it's not urgent, it really gets to you. And this would happen even when I was studying. And literally, I remember being so frustrated where I just would burst out and like fight and argue and tell them, I can't help you. Why do you guys expect me to help? You're adults. You do it yourself. And it was just, my attitude was just to yell and argue and fight back. But after a while, I realized, okay, I need a better solution for this because this is not helping anybody. They don't get it. Like, they don't get why I'm so upset that they're asking me for like a minor favor. We're family. We should help each other out. And they don't understand me that I need to focus because I'm studying for a master's program, for example. So I literally sat down one day and I was like, look, when you guys, and I assumed like they would just know if I keep getting interrupted, like it's not gonna help me like study, but it wasn't clear to them, even something that simple, until I literally set them aside and I said, look, what I'm studying here, what I'm doing here, I really need to focus. And by you guys keep interrupting me, I'm not able to get that done. So I'm going to put like a sign on my door, like almost like in progress, right? Or working or whatever it was. I forgot what my sign was, but I think it was, I really forgot. It was a sign, but it was something along like working or studying or in progress, one of those. So anytime that sign was up there, they knew not to bother me. Like I was focused and I was really doing something. But anytime that sign wasn't there, they knew they couldn't bother me. And I also put like a mailbox type of thing, because a lot of my interruptions were like making calls for mail and bills and stuff like that. Since my parents English is not their first language, I was the one by default dealing with all of that. But that's another issue I have. I hate calling for bills. It's like it had become like a sore spot. So now if anytime I hear that hold music, I just lose it, and I don't know how to uncondition myself from that. But maybe a little therapy for that will help in the future. But now that I'm getting sidetracks, let's go back to my solution to the problem. So literally I put it like a little mailbox and I said, okay, if it's something you guys need me to do, leave it here. And I have a designated hour in the beginning of my day or at the end of my day where I can focus on the things that you guys need help with. Because obviously, we're family. I want to be there for them. I want to help, but I can't let it get in the way of my progress and my success. So that was another example where initially I was like, why don't they get it? I would just yell and be angry for them interrupting me, but they really didn't get it. They didn't understand. But once I took the time to communicate that with them, everybody was happy, right? What they needed to get done got done, still in a timely manner, and I didn't get interrupted when I was focusing, so I could get my studying or my work, whatever I needed to do done without any interruptions. All right. So another thing that a lot of people have a problem with in relationships is personal issues. The personal issues is being overwhelmed by life. Okay. And I can relate to this actually pretty recently, like last night. I really gave my husband a lot of crap. Just blew up on him. I took it out on him because I was just overwhelmed with life, but mine was mainly for the kids. Okay, I know I keep saying this, but I still don't have a great handle on their schedule and their routine and their sleeping. And when you're tired, and I was sick again last week, it really gets to you after a while. But they're little, they're tiny, how mad can I get at them? So then I project on my husband. But obviously it's good to recognize that. A lot of people don't recognize that when they're taking it out on somebody else. That's one thing we need to be very careful of, because it does really put a toll on our relationships. So if we're really overwhelmed in life for whatever reason, if it's stress at work, if it's stress at home, if it's an illness, if it's financial issues, whatever it is, we need to really sit down and take a deep breath, walk away, cool off, and not take it out on the person in our relationship, right? Because that's just really unhealthy and unfair, and it really puts a toll on it, right? And I feel really bad. Like, again, I'm aware of this, but once in a while, I'm human, it gets to me, and I need a reminder for myself to really use these, I guess, tools in order to just keep my relationships happy and healthy. So that's one thing I really, really would encourage you guys to do, is pay attention to when you're angry and upset and fighting and arguing with somebody. Stop for a second and think, okay, am I really just overwhelmed with life, and am I taking it out on this person and they didn't really do anything that's that horrible, just like a small last thing that they could have done that triggered it. But the reality is we're projecting. I've actually worked with a lot of people who do this. I've seen it, so I know it's a really common problem. Even clients like I've had that I know, there's other things going on in their lives that they're overwhelmed with, and then maybe a tiny thing is not exactly to their liking with the service we provide in the salon, and they blow up and they take it out of proportion. And then after, talking to them, calming them down, most of the time they do apologize and they say, sorry, I'm really going through this hard time in my life. Usually it's like a breakup or a divorce or something huge. And obviously, I understand. But again, if we want to keep our relationships happy and healthy and keep ourselves happy and healthy, we need to realize when we're overwhelmed and find healthy ways to deal with that compared to taking it out on the people around us. So my main thing is just knowing that reminder is anytime I'm really upset, I just kind of need to remind myself to pause and be like, okay, what can I do that calms me down? Like for me, a lot of times it's walking, running, some sort of physical exercise to blow off that steam, or really just to journal, to write it down. I'm so upset because blah, 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 blah. And then like that, I'm almost taking it out on the journal instead of on the people around me. So again, it's silly, and sometimes it's hard to control when you're that upset. But if you really want to be happier and overall have healthy relationships around you, we need to work on ourselves. And I think that's a good tool and approach. And obviously, if you do mess up, like I did last night, take the time and go apologize to the person. Say, look, honestly, I know lately I've been a beep and I don't mean to take it out on you. It's just I have all these things that are going on in my life. And right now, I just need you to kind of support me and just deal with my BS and don't take it personally. Sometimes I do that, honestly, because a lot of times I have a lot on my shoulders, and I tend to take it out on my husband. So sometimes I'll tell him look, I'm so sorry. I know I have a lot right now. Please don't take it personally if I'm kind of a bitch. Ignore me, okay? But then obviously, and then I find healthy ways to deal with my stuff, and then I can apologize. I'm okay, let's try to go have fun and have a good life again. I think, again, pause and reflect and find your ways of calming down, blowing off steam before you take it out on the people around you. Now, another thing about being overwhelmed in life, I think we humans almost all of us have a FOMO, fear of missing out, and we tend to want to do everything. And I can relate. For a long time, that was me, especially fun things. I never wanted to miss with my friends, with my family. Even if I was tired, exhausted, had a lot of work, had a lot of homework, I would still go and try to make it to this birthday, to this event, to this dinner. And then I would feel again really overwhelmed and tired because I didn't get enough sleep because I'm just trying to do it all. But I think that's one other thing we need to recognize is we need to sit down and see where our time is going and what is really overwhelming us and really to try to find the solution. For me personally right now, and still it's been kind of a long time, this has been the thing that's overwhelming me, is my kids sleep at night, and for me to not get enough rest, and then obviously my immune system's low for that, and I keep getting sick from the kids' daycare. And I know a lot of people can relate to that. I realize that that's my main issue that's kind of holding me back from having more energy, time, and everything to be successful and happy in the other areas of my life. So now I finally decided that, okay, I'm going to make this a priority. I need to solve this issue so I'm not overwhelmed and I can move forward, right? Not kind of like try to ignore it and really try to still do everything else. So I kind of put a pause on doing things like going out, staying late, and I'm really focusing on trying to maintain a routine and figure out the sleep situation with the kids compared to just, like I said, trying to do everything again and being overwhelmed. So I would say find a route to your exhaustion or your overwhelmness in life and tackle it one thing at a time, because especially when we are overwhelmed, everything just seems to be an issue and we don't have enough time and enough energy to solve any problems. But if we really just pick one main thing that you really think will help you be less overwhelmed, then you'll open up more time and energy to slowly get back to a place where you're feeling good. So this one other thing is, we've all heard of it, is taking each other for granted. And I think a lot of people are really guilty of this, especially when they've been in a relationship for a long term. We just get comfortable with each other. And this is not only romantic relationship. This could be your roommate, this could be your parents, this could be your kids, it could be your employees. Any relationship you have that is close to you, that you're pretty much interacting with on the daily, all these apply to it. It's not only for romantic relationships, because a lot of times even our best friends or our close friends, those are relationships we need to make sure we're maintaining and working on as well. So with that said, taking each other for granted is a huge one that we're all guilty of. And literally, you just have to be aware and put in time and effort to acknowledge and, even just simple compliment the person in your relationship. So for me, if it's my husband, again, we get so caught up with the day-to-day life. We're so busy and we're just tired at the end of the day. We just almost are taking each other for granted and just going on with life. Instead of taking literally 2 seconds and saying, oh, thanks, babe, you are always making sure we have food for dinner, for example. That one simple compliment and recognition, so the person doesn't feel like they're being taken for granted, can really make a difference. And honestly, this is one huge thing that I see in other people's relationships. Sometimes we can't see it in ours unless we're really paying attention, but in a lot of people's relationships close to my life, that's what I've noticed. It's just simply one of the people in the relationship don't feel like they are valued, and because the other person's taking them for granted. So simple thing like, thank you so much for always making sure, in the morning we have breakfast together, or thank you so much for always filling my car and there's always gas in there. Oh, thank you that you're the one who's always takes out the trash. I really appreciate that. Oh, you're the creative one. I love it that you decorate our house. So anything that's even minor, if we acknowledge and not take the person for granted in our relationship, will go a long way of having healthier, happier partnerships with them. And like that, we can really stay connected with them too, right? Because sometimes we get so comfortable for the day-to-day. So let's say you are in a relationship where you're always responsible for the dishes, right? then it just becomes like, oh, she's the one who always does dishes. And then after a while, you could feel like, oh, I do all these things, but nobody appreciates me. So many people feel that way. So many people feel like they're not appreciated. If you're the person who feels not appreciated, I think you need to work on the communication part of this podcast that we're talking about, and you need to use your voice and say it. And I can tell you from a very close person that I know that this issue exists, the taking for granted, is they're not communicating. They're not saying, hey, I feel like I'm not being appreciated, I'm taking granted for. Instead, they're lashing out, they're being like loud and arguing, picking fights, not getting along. But the reality is they're not feeling appreciated. So if you recognize, oh, that's your issue, you feel like your partner or the person in your relationship is taking you for granted, you need to speak up and say, hey, I know I've been acting upset and ignoring you or not being happy or fighting with you, but I really think I don't feel appreciated. And I think if we just spend the time to do that, and really like be heard and be explain to them why we don't feel appreciated, hopefully the person in your life will recognize and be like, okay, I didn't realize that, I'm sorry, I'll try better. But obviously if they're not willing to hear you out when you have something to say, then that's a whole other issue, and you may want to, reconsider your approach or really get maybe professional help for counseling. Because if you try to speak up and talk your needs to your partner or in your relationship, but they're not willing to, do their part to hear you out, then that's going to make you feel even more taken for granted. It's like, okay, I tried even to say what I need, but why is this person not meeting me halfway, right? I think most of the time, when we are in the right relationships, but obviously every relationship has a problem, and we communicate, it does make the relationship a lot better, and it makes us feel a lot better. And it's just as simple as telling them what we need. And then if you're the person who you feel like, oh, maybe I've been taking the people in my life for granted, and once in a while I feel like that for my best friend, honestly. Like I have this one best friend, she's always down, she'll always be there when I need her. And then sometimes when I get really busy, I feel like I kind of like not ignore, but I don't keep in touch as much. Then I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to put in a little bit more effort and reach out and be like, hey, I love you, remember when we did this? I really appreciated you being there for me in my time of need. And that just like literally 2-minute conversation or even a text can really like make that bond and that relationship stronger. So again, I really encourage you guys to either communicate if you're the person who feels like you're being taken granted of. And I know a lot of people have this issue with their friends. Like they say, oh, she's a bad friend. I'm the one who always asks her to go out. I'm the one who always keeps in touch to do things. Why doesn't she reach out? We all have to remember, again, if we feel like we're being taken for granted of, tell the person, talk to them. And a lot of times it's not personal. I feel like I personally sometimes might be considered a bad friend, for example, because I get so busy, so tied up with all the things that I'm working on. And especially now adding a family and kids to that picture, I could see where sometimes some people might think, hey, she's a bad friend. Like she's never trying to reach out to make plans. We're the ones who are always making plans. But the reality of it is not. Like I love my friends. I would spend every moment with them if I can. But sometimes I'm so overwhelmed, I forget, and I'm human. But if they know that, if I communicate that with them and, they know that it's not personal, and we all need to keep that as an option. Certain things that people do, we can't take it personally. It really is not. Everybody has stuff that they're dealing with in their personal lives, and it's not about you. It's not an attack towards you or something bad towards you. They're going through something. Maybe you need to reach out and be like, hey, I haven't heard from you for a week. Is everything okay? Can I help with something? Instead of feeling like, oh, she's such a bad friend, she hasn't called me for a week, for example. So like I said, I think we need to really pick the people around us, our relationships, very wisely. But once we know these are the people that are worth to have good, solid relationships with, we need to do these things to work on there. And I think I remember reading this in one book. I think her name was Gretchen Rubin. I may be messing up her last name, but the book was called The Happiness Project. Her backstory was she was like a successful lawyer. She had a family. Everything seemed picture perfect, but she was unhappy. So she tried to do these happiness projects to find her happy place. And I really enjoyed reading that book. The takeaway for me from there was that literally one main thing that keeps us happy is the relationships in our lives. And I think you need about 9 good, close, healthy relationships to really feel connected and fulfilled. So that kind of stuck with me, and I've kind of picked my 9 to 10 people in my life that I really want to put an effort with. I literally have a secret list, like the MySpace days, my top 10 friends. And those are the people that I'll drop what I'm doing. If they need me, I'll go and I'll do whatever they need me to do, right? They're my priorities. But again, I protect my time to make sure I only do that for the quality people in my life, in my relationship that's worth it and that I, have that relationship with. And I'm constantly trying to work on the relationship. And I highly suggest you do the same. So if you're a person who, I know some people don't have really long lasting close friendships either, and you need to take that into consideration. Maybe, there is something you're doing wrong or taking personally that you haven't been able to build that and connect with people to that level. And we need to work on that. I think the first step of just anything is accepting that everything's in our control. So I know a lot of people long to have really close relationships, if it's a friendship, if it's a relationship, like a romantic one. But nowadays, a lot of people are not willing to put in the work to get there. And a lot of times we have issues that we need to work on ourselves in order to keep the relationship with whoever healthy, right? Instead of saying, oh, this person is X, Y, and Z, and I'm just not going to be friends with them, or I'm not going to date them anymore. Anyways, I could probably talk about that for a long time, but let's move on to the next one. So the next one on my list is money issues. I'm actually a little tongue-tied about what to talk about money issues because it could be really simple or really complicated. But I think I've learned that you need to keep it really simple because money is one of those things that's always going to go and it's always going to come. Sometimes you're going to have more of it. Sometimes you're going to have less of it. Maybe you're lucky you're born into it and that's not an issue ever. Or maybe you really came from a family where you always had to work really hard to make ends meet. But just keep in mind, like anything else, money is not what makes you or your relationship. It's just almost like a tool or an obstacle, tool or obstacle that can really make your relationship stronger or weaker. And you need to make the choice that no matter what, you're going to use it as a tool to make your relationship stronger. So if you're having money issues, a lot of people are always having money issues in relationships, and then you get mad at your significant other or your family or your parents, and you're frustrated and upset that you don't have enough money to do X, Y, and Z. So my advice for that is, instead of getting upset at the person in your relationship, take it in your control. You need to be responsible for making how much ever money you want in order for you to be happy, right? You can't expect somebody else to provide for you in order for you to be happy when it comes to money. Because if you do that, again, first, it's unfair. I don't know what arrangement you guys have in your relationships, but the bottom line is, this is what I believe, obviously, it's my opinion, but unless you are earning your money yourself, you're not going to even enjoy having that money and spending it. If somebody were to just give you endless money and you could do endless things, after a while, you're going to be super bored. You're going to be super depressed because you're not going to really have any meaning in life. Just know that money is really not the key to happiness. It's just a tool that we can use to, again, better our lives, better our relationships. But if there is money issues, my number one thing is don't blame anybody else. Try to work as hard as you can to solve that money problem by maybe getting a nighttime job, go back to school, get more skills, take a trade class, have a side job, whatever you can do, there's always options, okay, in order to try to earn more money if you're willing to put in the work. Second thing is, if you have limited budget, spend accordingly accordingly, right? You have to learn to work with what you got. And if you have less, you need to work with that less with your partner, with your relationship, in order to make the most of it, compared to being angry at each other that we're poor, right? Instead, you have to see, okay, this is how much we have, and these are our priorities. How can we make that money work for us? You almost have to use it as a challenge to make it work together instead of letting it push you apart. I'll talk about like a romantic relationship or a partnership, or even if you're, a family, like mom, dad, siblings. People need to come to terms that alone we're really nothing. It's the people around us that really sometimes makes us who we are. And I'm a big believer of family and partnerships. And we can't look at that I make 100,000, my husband or my dad, my sister makes 10,000. So I could live a luxury life and I'm going to be mad at them for not contributing as much. If you are a family, you need to just make terms that we all bring in different amounts, and we need to be okay with that. You just need to come to terms with that. And I'm a huge believer of all the money going into one pot, and everybody spends it however they need to, or however is agreed upon as like the family budget, right? I don't like the idea of having separate accounts. I know a lot of married people still do that too, but I think that's kind of a reason and a way to stay separated as well. If we're going to commit to a life together, I think the financials needs to be part of it. So I think it was Dave Ramsey, and he used to have a radio show, or one of his audios that I listened to a long time ago, and that's what he shared, and that had stuck with me even before I was married. And I can tell you honestly, that advice, once I came to terms with it, has made the money problem not a problem in my relationship and in my life. Because a lot of times, like in my parents' household, in my current household, not all of us have made the same amount of money. I have come terms with it too, and if I have more, I'm gonna have to share, and that's just the way it is. If I love these people and we're family, that is what it is. I need to be okay and be terms with it. And if we have less, we have less together. If we have more, we have more together. And literally, you just have to put that in your head and believe that, and I think it'll help with the money problems. And think of each other as like a partnership, again, to solve your issues instead of getting at each other for making more money. All right, the next one is war of chores. So this is a fun one, and I think I had a really great solution with this. I'm so happy to talk about this. I'm like, I know I did this one right from the beginning. Even before me and my husband were married or living together, at that time, I was kind of like, now I'm obsessed with success and fulfillment and happiness and all that topic. But at that time, I was single, so I was obsessed with relationships and how to have healthy, good relationships. So I was doing a lot of like studying and reading about relationships. And I'm like, I got this one right from the beginning, and it's stuck. So before we were even in like a committed relationship or we lived together and eventually married or whatever, I literally sat down with him. I'm like, okay, so we need to come to terms from now, and we need to decide who does what around the house. Because, even though our culture sometimes is old school, you're not going to expect me to do all the cooking, all the cleaning. Like, that's not me. Like, I don't do that. Even with the kids, I'm not going to do everything, I'm a career woman. But we got to figure out what works, okay? So what are you willing to do? What am I willing to do? And what is this area that none of us are willing to do? And what are we going to do about it, right? So I think that was the best thing we can do, because after that, we never really had any issues with war of chores. We never got mad at each other about, hey, you never help, you don't do the vacuuming, you don't do this. Like, we literally sat down from the beginning and agreed, okay, for one of his main things was like, I don't do dishes. He hates doing dishes. I said, okay, I'm not going to make you. I don't mind doing dishes. I'll do the dishes. And then I hated vacuuming. I was like, I hate vacuuming. I'm not going to do the vacuuming. He's like, oh, I don't mind vacuuming. I'll do the vacuuming. That was like one simple example. So we literally broke all the chores down from the beginning. One other thing is like, okay, down the line when we have kids, he said, I'm not going to change any poopy diapers. Of course, he kind of had to, because it's so much when you have two tiny kids. He did give in on that one, but that was one of our agreements. He was never going to change poopy diapers, and I wasn't going to wake up at nights because I don't do good when I don't sleep. But of course, I had to still wake up at night. So we still gave in those two things. But then that was fair. But at least, honestly, until today, for the baby, he's the one who wakes up at night if she wants milk. Because even before we were in a committed relationship, literally we were just dating, and I have no shame. I'll bring everything up from the beginning, and I learned that from all the relationship advice type of research I did, because I was sick of being in bad relationships. I was like, I'm gonna get this right. Like, what am I doing wrong, or how am I picking the wrong person? And I guess it kind of worked, because after that, I guess he was the last guy. We're married, hopefully, forever. So from the beginning, even before we were officially dating, we had set that ground rule, right? I don't do good when I wake up at nights. You don't want to change poopy diaper. So if it's a poopy diaper, you change it. But if the baby wakes up at night, I don't mind. That was my husband. He didn't mind, getting a little sleep because he's not a big sleeper anyways. Literally, we had kind of talked about that even before we were in a committed relationship. And until today, that's not an issue. Like, until today, he's the one who wakes up in the middle of the night for the baby to feed the baby. And it's never an argument. He doesn't fight about it and say, oh, how come you never wake up for the baby? Blah, blah, blah. Because we've said that really clearly from the beginning, that is your responsibility. It's your chore. And then same for the other things that we talked about. So I think it really works. So I think this one is a win for me for my relationship. Just really sit down and figure out who does what. I think that it helps having a business, because I've had to really give different tasks to different people, and okay, this person's responsible for X, Y, and Z. The second person's responsible for X, Y, and Z. So I think if you literally treat your household like a business and sit down and divide up the chores per person per day, for example, you would not have that issue and you won't be annoyed. So one thing I would encourage you, if you feel like you're always annoyed that you're doing more or somebody's doing less, it's not fair, it's not equal, sit down and make a plan where everybody's happy with it. And if there's one chore, or let's say there's two chores that nobody wants to do, you guys can literally flip a coin and one person gets each, or you can alternate per week or per day to keep it fair. And I think like that, everybody would kind of know what is expected of them and they'll do it. And if they don't do it, then you'll have the opportunity to be upset with them. But most of the time, and I've learned this in business, if somebody's duties or jobs or chores are defined clearly and they fully understand and commit to doing it, there's a really highly likely chance that it's going to get done. But if it's not defined clearly and it's not really agreed upon, then most likely it's not going to happen. So I hope that helps, because I know that's a big issue in some households or some relationships. And even especially with people with roommates too, or in a bigger household where some people might be extremely clean and organized, and some people might not care about those things. So I think this should help. Another topic on my list of common relationship issues is mistrust. And I think in my life, I learned that if I don't trust somebody, I'm probably never going to trust them, and I need to get rid of them from my life. So it's pretty maybe rootless or simple, and I know life's more complicated for people, but for me, that's what I've learned and that's what I've been following. So if I don't trust somebody in my life, if it's an employee, if it's a friend, if it's a relationship, if it's family member, I really would cut them out or keep a really far distance where they're not going to be in my close relationship circle. So then I don't have to worry about them, right? And it took me a long time to get to this place. I want to say probably this year. It takes some time to really just really put your foot down and not accept any BS in your life. And I think this was one of the areas in my life. It's even if I didn't trust somebody 100%, I would still give them chances, or I would try to talk to them, try to change them maybe in certain things. But I've came to terms, if it's somebody I don't trust and that trust is broken, more than likely I'm never really going to trust them. So why am I wasting my time and energy? It's better to split apart. So that's that. I don't know if that's overly simple or black and white. I know life is really not black and white, but I think trust is one of those things that once it's really broken, it's super hard to get back. So if you have a mistrust situation in your relationship, really ask yourself and listen to your gut feeling and intuition. Say, what this person did that makes me mistrust them, can they do something to prove to me, for me to be okay with whatever happened and trust them again? Is there a scenario in reality where I could say, okay, I fully forgive what happened, that I don't trust them, and now I'm gonna fully commit to trusting them again. And if that answer is like obvious, it's like no, like there's nothing they can do for me to trust them again, then for me that would be like, okay, I'm not going to waste my time to have this person in my life. But I know some people also have trust issues, or that's what people call it, is when they project their trust because of their behavior or because of a past relationship. If you feel like you're a person who never trusts people and you're always kind of like waiting for somebody to do something wrong for you to lose your trust, or you're off the bat, like if you're this type of person, off the bat you'd be like, oh, I don't trust anybody, right? Because maybe you've been hurt too many times before, maybe like you haven't been treated right, or maybe you're a person who's not trustworthy yourself and you hate to admit that. And I'll do it in the most like easiest example I can think of is cheating. You know, people usually who are cheaters and cheat on their relationship, in their romantic relationship, more likely they have mistrust towards their significant other. So they'll always be like looking and watching and accusing and like thinking that their significant other is doing something wrong, and they can't trust the significant other because they're doing something wrong themselves. Because if they're doing it, maybe somebody else is also doing it. Keep those things in mind. And obviously, like I always encourage, if this is a long-term relationship you've had and you have mistrust or you have situations you really want to work on it, I always recommend seeing a counselor and see if you can work through it. But don't waste your time. Honestly, life is too short. If you know in your gut feeling there's no way you're ever going to trust a person again, I would move on and really try to be in better relationships where you can be happier and successful. If we dwell on the past and bad relationships, then that's just going to be a pattern, and it's just going to keep going, and we're going to end up wasting a lot of our time and a lot of our lives. And I've known a lot of people with issues that have to do with that, and sure enough, after a few years it was done anyways, and they just wasted that time. So get the help you need, but if it's not working, it's okay to move on and try to find people in your life that you actually trust. And if you think you're the problem and you have things that you do wrong, that you're not trustworthy, if you have any doubt in that, definitely see a counselor to work on your issues for yourself. Because unless you resolve your issues yourself, you're never going to be able to be in a good relationship and have healthy life even. So recognize that if that's you, and get the help you need, because sometimes we're the problem and we blame the other people in our lives. All right, so life goals. This is a tough one, because first, a lot of times people don't even know what their life goals are. But a common issue in relationships, another common issue, is a shift in life goals, or we're not seeing eye to eye anymore. I want different things. The people in my life want different things. I see this happening in friends a lot of times and in marriages a lot of times. And again, it's because we're human, we grow, and sometimes we outgrow the people around us. So again, if it's friends, depending on how long and strong that friendship is, it's harder to kind of outgrow them, you know, even when you're growing as a person, to really leave some people behind. But sometimes it's necessary when you outgrow the people around you and your goals are different, for you to find the friends or find the people around you that have similar goals. Again, it's easier said than done. And I have that issue sometimes too, because I'm always working on myself to evolve and grow. And then certain people in my life are not. They're happy with where they're at. And so I have that struggle all the time. I don't think I 100% figured out the best system, but what I do is I try to incorporate new people that have similar goals or have similar mindsets as me, where I can connect with them and be challenged, but still cherish my long-term friendships for what they are, you know? So I differentiate based on, okay, so fun, family, friends, being there for each other. And then if I need people to like kind of challenge my mind in a way, because I have different life goals, then I'll try to make new friends or new colleagues or new like-minded people to connect with. So I kind of get best of both worlds. But if it's a marriage and a relationship, I know that a lot of times this is a cause for divorce too, because two people want two different things, and that's what ends up happening is they grow apart. Maybe they got married when they were way too young, they committed when they were too young, and they've changed what they want as they grew. But I'm not an expert on that. I don't have too much experience on that. So that's kind of where I want to put it. My main challenge sometimes is I'm really kind of big on mindset lately. My challenge with my husband is he doesn't really care about that stuff that I care about. So I'm trying to find a way to kind of show him that, this is important. It works. Let's work on this. Let's be a power couple. But I learned that you can't really change somebody. You need to accept them for who they are and take the good parts that you're happy with and run with it. And you can introduce your goals or your new mindset or lifestyle to the people around you. But if they don't love it and they don't want to run with that, like I said, you need to find new people that you can connect with that stuff and then connect on your other parts of your life with the people in your life. With this episode, I challenge all of you to look at you and look at your relationships and see if any of these common issues apply to you and really try to find the solution to better your life. Because you need to really know that unless we have good, happy, healthy relationships in our lives, there's no way we can be happy and successful. And of course, that's our goal on this podcast, to live a happy, fulfilled, rich life in all areas, financial and personal. So get to it. And I'm going to do the same. I'm always working on improving myself and my relationships to make sure that I am always in a happy state where I can grow all the other things in my life. Well, until next time, let me know if there's a topic you guys want to talk about. Have a great day. Thank you for listening. Please rate and review this podcast. Follow and engage with us on social media under the Yegi Project. And if you're interested in being a guest, email info@theyegiproject.com. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episodes.